So, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are, everyone, I am really fucking excited to be joined by Tony Rogers today. Tony, welcome, and Tony Rogers' amazing beard. I have to say that thing is freaking legendary. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic, man. There's a lot of vitamins and amino acids here, up here in the Pacific Northwest, all organic. So that's now how we do it.
You're in Washington, right?
I am, yep, right here in Seattle.
And it looks like it's sunny. What the fuck?
I know. We've had some really weird weather over the last few years, man. It's actually nice. It's finally starting to get a little sunny outside. Last summer was weird. We had, I think, 71 straight days without rain. That set a consecutive record. The previous year was like 67.
Wow.
So each summer it gets drier and hotter, but the winter time's still really wet. So this is kind of a nice surprise. And I figured I'd give you guys a little, a little view of the trees behind my house here, a little environmental.
Turning into Southern California with the weather like that.
It's I think it's probably going that route pretty quickly. Firstly, I just wanted to say, Bob, thank you so much, man. I'm a huge fan of your work. You've been in this industry for 30 plus years. And I just feel blessed for you to have me on this show. This is my actual first official podcast / webinar. So,
well, I will tell you that I feel the same. There are people who motivate me, and you're one of them. Like, I watch everything that you post, and I learn a lot from your stuff. Like, you go deep into the tech, and that's what this show is going to be about this week. Is like, I'm a big guy. I'm not a tech guy, right? I mean, I know enough about the technology. And I've run product teams, and I get the tech, but I'm not a tech guy. I'm a business guy, right? And so I talk about, it's not about the tech, but it's all about the tech in a way. And when you're building experiences, it's about the tech being like, really ultimately we want it to be invisible to the player, to the consumer, right? We don't want them thinking about the technically. And so Sushant is saying, is the stream currently off? I'm just going to check in with the crowd now.
I see some people. Kylie just texted in.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll just tell Sushant if you need to just refresh browser. So so it's about the tech, but it's not about the tech. And there's so much happening in VR. One of the big business risks that everybody has is you develop a solution, and by the time you get the solution to market, the technology is obsolete, right? And so this show, what I want to do is I want to talk to you about what are you seeing in the technology trends, because you're following this shit like nobody else I know. And by the way, you're an inspirational guy too, and I know you've heard that from other people, and I just want you to hear it from me. People look at me as an inspiration, and I just want to acknowledge that. Everybody's inspired by somebody, and you're one of mine. Like, I love your energy and the enthusiasm and how open and everything that you share as a way of educating people. And there's so much love that comes through in that. I just want to say that I'm honored to have you on my show. So thank you.
Man, that means a lot to me. Obviously, when I set out for this 3 years ago, and again, I'm a newbie in this space particularly. I mean, I used to be special forces in the military. I worked on the C-130 gunships, the B-52s, the A-10s, and then I transitioned over to Task Force Troy, counter-ID electronic warfare after 9/11 hit. A lot of our guys were dying from IEDs over in Iraq and Afghanistan, so I joined a task force, and that was my job. I was the senior engineer. For many years, we were trying to take the death rate down from above 80% to less than 20, which we successfully did. So I traveled all the way around Iraq and Afghanistan looking at, I had a top secret clearance, so we had a lot of different insight into radio frequency receive transmit systems, infrared barrage jamming system, computer vision, stuff that's now becoming, out in the industry, common words that everybody's referencing, semantic segmentation and super resolution and all these things. But we were actually using those things, 12 years ago for signals intelligence. We were trying to identify what kinds of signals were detonating the bombs. They were using garage door openers and toy cars, and then it transitioned to cell phones and higher power systems. So my experience in various types of technologies kind of really got, I would say, it grew during that time period, just because I was embedded with some of the smartest Raytheon and other governmental contractors in the world for many years. But I mean, I grew up playing. I grew up playing video games. I mean, I grew up playing some of the earlier VR adoption systems and the laser tag system that you did in '91. And the Game Boy VR system, all based on stereoscopic 3D.
Yeah.
But I'm a huge Nintendo guy. I mean, it was built on Carl Guttag's original 8816 GPU and the Sega Genesis, and I had the Sega CD. I had Nintendo 64. I think at one time I had probably 12 systems all hooked up to a small 13-inch CRT.
With multiple AB switches, right? I remember those days.
You got to switch it to C, and then you got to take the game out and blow on it. Get it in and slap it down, So I mean, I grew up in the '80s with all this stuff. So now, for me to look at where technology has come from and is where it is now is really fascinating to me, and that's one of the reasons why I set out on this journey officially, probably about 3 years ago. I was asked to give a presentation at the Wharton School in the University of Pennsylvania. I was enrolled in a global CEO program with 23 of the top CEOs in the world. We had Steven Schiffman, he's the CEO of Calvin Klein. We had Enrique Ostale, who's in charge of Walmart's $90 billion international division. Pablo Ducey, who's the CEO of Volkswagen South America. So a lot of really big, I call them the big guys. And they asked me to give a presentation, and I was first. I said, "Oh God, thanks a lot." And at the time, I didn't want to talk about many of the other things I do, which is like, supervisory control and data acquisition systems for data centers, BMS, and battery monitoring. That's really not that exciting to a vast majority of people. So I bought a Microsoft HoloLens, and in 7 days, I taught myself everything I could about the mixed reality toolkit and the SDK, certain APIs, but also just use cases for these really big industry leaders. And coincidentally, I think it was about a year later, Enrique bought 17,000 Oculus Go's. He had texted me on WhatsApp and said, "Hey, what do you think about this? We're going to use it for training." And I said, "That's a great idea, man. You should buy more. For onboarding and training, it can increase productivity and increase efficiency, and so on and so forth." So,
let's start with AR. So I know, and by the way, recently I saw your review of the RealMax headset and with Nigel, and I connected with him, and then he flew to Vegas and demoed it for me at the Amusement Expo. And, because he's really looking at location-based entertainment as a way to get that product to market. And so let's talk about augmented. He's a really interesting guy and a great product, I thought. But again, AR's, not necessarily my area of expertise. And so, you've done HoloLens 2, Magic Leap, RealMax, and probably others. Like, how do you see, like, my frustration with all of it has been field of view and motion controls, right? I mean, those are the two things that without that, because you can't have the technology disappear if all you're thinking about is, wow, I feel like I'm looking through a keyhole at this world, right? Or I can't make anything work, which is the HoloLens one thing. Like, for me, it was really frustrating. What's your experience been? What works? What doesn't work? What challenges are you seeing that they need to overcome? And how long is it going to take before that thing really works for a typical user?
Well, I mean, field of view isn't everything, and I think Carl Guttag touches a lot on this. I highly recommend. I remember you saying, and I'd referenced Carl before, and you were like, you should follow Tony. Well, I also, I'm purveyor of knowledge, and I like to empower people. So I'll try to basically, take the complication of Carl's terminology and break it down in layman's terms. And he references something like, when you go to a movie theater, the optimal field of view is around 50 degrees. Otherwise, you'd sit really close to the movie theater and get this huge 140, 150 degree field of view. So that's not always a driver, but right now it is mainly in various mixed reality optics, because it's kind of been conflated and confusing for consumers. So I'll give you an example. At the Mobile World Conference this year, Alex Kipman comes out for the HoloLens 2.0. And one of the first things he says is, we doubled the field of view, right? Everybody's going crazy. Reddit's going nuts, YouTube, LinkedIn. I'm excited. I'm like, oh my God, they're using a butterfly waveguide. It was at 34 degrees. We're above 70 now. I was a little worried about the seam. And then the next day they come out and say, well, we actually meant area, and that's confusing to consumers, enterprise clients, because they're expecting, something that's, 80, 90 degrees field of view. When you get it, and this is also confusing because customers are like Magic Leap and Microsoft, you see this from a third person spectator view. So when it's on stage, consumers out in the world have no idea that when you're in the headset, it's actually, the HoloLens 2 or HoloLens 1 was more or less like a VH1, a VHS tape right here. Now the new HoloLens 2.0 has increased the vertical resolution. But again, they confuse people because when they showed the imagery of the HoloLens 2.0, it showed a much wider field of view on the vertical, but they didn't tell everybody that was reserved for interpupillary distance automatic calibration.
Yeah.
So it's a problem. And if you look at Nigel's Real One system, that's 100 degrees. It's using an LCD, very bright. I think it's around 1,200 nits.
Yeah.
If you compare that to the Magic Leap, I think we have 210 on the Magic Leap, around 500 on the new HoloLens 2.0, around 340. So for giving an example, if you're sitting outside on a nice sunny day, I wouldn't be able to use the HoloLens right here in direct sunlight, right? With the diffractive waveguide optics, it's just not going to work. I mean, primarily, you'd have to drive it with a much brighter and intense LED source inside, which takes more battery life, right? So they're always trying to balance all of these equations, and it's really it's the physics that's limiting everything right now. And I would like. Go ahead.
No, so you talk about physics. That was one of the things that I was hoping for with Magic Leap is, they had all of this money and they were talking this amazing game. And I just assumed that they were inventing new physics solutions. And I was like, how do you feel about what you've done? Because most people on this haven't done HoloLens, haven't done Magic Leap. That one's hard to get your hands on. What's your take on them?
Well, if you listen to Roni talk about it, that's exactly what you thought. It sure sounds like light field photonics, and simulating the way that your brain views this magic verse and Oasis. They were onto something. That doesn't mean that they're not, but I'm a purveyor of facts. I think like an engineer. I like to break a system down to the smallest indiscernible point, and then say, okay, what is that operational amplifier doing? What's that divider circuit doing? What's that AI chip doing? How is it powering? How is it interfaced? All of those things together, they've really, I think they missed a mark. I mean, if you look at what the Magic Leap did, and I was probably one of the people that was the most excited. I mean, if you look on Reddit, there's a lot of people that support them. I think their community is the strength of Magic Leap, but their device itself, I mean, they haven't even sold 8,000 units. So if you look at the grand scheme of gaming around the world, and you've talked a great deal about this, they're not even on the map.
Not even a blip, yeah.
They're not even a fledgling startup. And I referenced that. And I've gotten some conversations with Roni Abrovitz and Rio online on Twitter, because I'm a critic. And this is what I told Roni, because he's got a member of the Matrix team on his staff. And I said, just like the Matrix, Roni, in this world, I'm just a part of a system. And because of the way that you and your team launched, your unicorn startup, raised $2.5 billion, I'm part of the opposite end of that spectrum now, who is holding you accountable. So when you are saying that your product is available to use in various environmental conditions, well, what are those conditions? Because when I test them, I'm going to tell you right now, you can't use it outside. You can't use it and OSHA would never certify this because you got a cord hanging down. If that rips off, there isn't a disconnect at the bottom, it'll tear your head off, right? So mainly this was used as a proof of concept to satisfy some investor curiosity, to show them, listen, we're being productive. We made something. We have a community. Now we're going to have, I was at LeapCon in November, so we're going to have a developer conference. We're going to drum up some excitement, get some presentations there. But, again, go ahead.
No, do you think, I tend to try to give people the benefit of the doubt on their intent. And I like to believe that their intent was to deliver what they promised, and they just ran into the wall of physics. and the fact that they were trying to do so many things, like building their own processors and optics and all of them, and industrial design and mechanical, like all of that. It's a full stack of every one of those is really hard to do. And $2.5 billion seems like a lot of money, but in the world of companies like Intel and Apple and stuff like that, it's not actually that much money, right? I mean, it's a drop in the bucket.
My God. I mean, I estimated, to Roney and to the Magic Leap Nation and all those guys, I said, you're going to need at least 15 to 20 billion to even make this a competitive venture. I mean, not even talking about Apple, and Apple has the largest augmented reality platform in the world, 600 million devices, with ARKit and supporting that with some new stereo AR in their next release. They're primed and ready for this. Everybody else is small potatoes. Even Microsoft knows that. Yeah. That's why they're focusing on enterprise clients. And Magic Leap, as Roney referenced before, they're David versus Goliath here, and I think what I've asked them to do is be more clear on their messaging, be more honest and truthful in their marketing efforts, and truly support indie developers out there, because their indie developer program to me was a kind of a fall in the face moment. I mean, I helped many people write their applications, over 50 different developers I helped get their applications in, and none of those people were chosen, not one. And that's incredible. So if you look at the pool of people they were trying to select in their indie program, more than 50% of those grants went to already bigger, dev communities or organizations that already had millions of dollars in funding. So, again, that is misleading, and how it looks on the outside is that you're kind of pandering to the money. Yeah, you're pandering to these people that are saying, we're going to promise you an enterprise application today so we can go compete with Microsoft, so you don't lose another $500 million contract to the IVAS and the Army. Yeah. And so that's what they're trying to do.
So if somebody watches this and they're thinking about doing something in AR for an entertainment application, which obviously is then consumer, what product should they look at, or should they just wait?
That's what I'm doing. I mean, there's a lot of people that ask me why I don't have applications out there in the consumer market. I've helped many enterprise clients write their own applications, and that's what makes me different than everybody else. I'll help write an application for a huge data center client, and then I give it to them. I'll just here, you can do it because now the technology's already been upgraded, and I'm on to something else. Yeah, you guys can have it. You don't even have to pay me a licensing fee, because I feel truly that it's not there yet. It's not to a point where anybody can come in and develop something where it's cross-platform, right? You're either ARKit, and so you're waiting on the Apple's either iteration of their 8K micro LED or the mixed reality headset, whatever they're going to do. I think they're going to do both. Or Google's platform and ecosystem, or Magic Leap, or Microsoft. Again, I think there's a huge opportunity for AR in general, and with companies like 6D AI and Phantasmo and Abound and some new camera positioning systems. I think that AR across all spectrum of phones, not just ARKit and AR Core, Google and Apple, but all phones around the world. I think there's 80% of most phones outside of the United States and India and all that don't support ARKit. They don't support AR Core, right? People aren't spending $1,500 a phone in India. That's not happening. But that's why these companies that are enabling, like Eighth Wall, enabling AR through the internet, just through a link, through positioning systems. I think that's a huge, probably the biggest opportunity outside of location-based virtual reality, which is, I think that's kind of growing. I wouldn't say exponentially, but it's hitting some inflection points here as we get into 2020.
Cool, awesome, thanks for that. So let's move over to VR, because that's where I think most of the applications are ready, today, and where most of the opportunity is today, especially in small business and location based. And I've got a bunch of buzzwords here that I'm gonna throw out, and we're gonna talk about them, because and so the first one, which was your most recent post. And by the way, before I forget to do this, if you guys don't follow, do you mind if I share your LinkedIn
Please
with
do.
The group? So go ahead and make sure you follow Tony on LinkedIn. He posts some amazing content, and it's often him doing shit. It's not like, he does reshare a lot of stuff, but oftentimes it's him in his bat cave with some new technology, and he's, showing how it works from the inside out. I just find it fascinating. So make sure you check out and follow him on LinkedIn. It's and it's entertaining too. So the most recent post you did was about something called foveated rendering. And now that's something that we're hearing a lot about from the headset manufacturers. In the lowest common denominator, what the hell is it, and why does it matter?
All right, I'll take my glasses off. These are the Bose AR, by the way. I love these glasses.
How do you like them? So
they're my favorite. I use them more than everything else. And then the View 6 Blades are number 2. But yeah, they're fantastic. I use them for everything. I think in the future, AR audio, spatialized audio, may be a bigger opportunity that no one talks about. And not only for helping disabled around the world, but just as you're walking around a city that you've never been to, you walk and it tells you, all right, to your right, here's this. And I'd like to eventually to see them maybe do some very simple overlay information like the North Focals with the laser beam scanning stuff, the former Intel Vaunt technology. But let's go on foveated rendering. So this is a big issue. I mean, right now, one of the reasons why we need a 2080 GPU or a 1080 NVIDIA GPU, whatever you're using, is because you have a huge cell phone screen right in front of you, right? So this thing is sitting on your eyes. Sometimes they'll have 2 screens with a IPD mechanical adjustment. And it takes a lot of power because that resolution across the entire screen, your eyes don't work like that. Generally you see the world, and I always tell people to hold your thumb out like this, right? And your eyes are looking at a very, very small fovea, which is ultra rendered, ultra photorealistic at 60 pixels per degree, 2020. We call it sub 1 arc minute. There's 60 degrees in your field of view here. And in the future, foveated rendering with eye tracking. And eye tracking is very important because they need to know where you're looking, so it can basically, go like this. So think of 2 different screens, and I'll give you an example. There's a company called VAai that has a new bionic display virtual reality system. They're selling it for $7,000. It's unbelievable. Enterprise clients, obviously, but what they're doing is they have like a Vive Pro peripheral, which is how you see the world, right? Just everything else is blurred out, but right here, right where your thumb is very, very ultra photorealistic, high resolution, and they're using light field cameras to track your eyes. And the problem is the resolution and accuracy. So they have some systems right now that are like 91% accurate, but that 9% of errors will throw the whole experience off, right? Because if you're in a game and you're shooting up and you can see everything ultra, and then all of a sudden it blurs out, you lose the feeling that you're inside a different world.
Yeah, it breaks the immersion. Absolutely.
It breaks the immersion, it breaks the experience. And we're not there yet. And that's one of the bigger issues I have with the technology as a whole, because I'm very sensitive to divergence accommodation conflict. So
what's that?
With VAai. Essentially, as the way that your eyes see the world, but via binocular disparity, okay? So if you look at something, your eyes are going to converge on that object and then try to accommodate. So it's going to try to essentially focus in that wherever you're looking. But in a display system, the display is here, but it's projecting digitally out something that's 7 feet away. So your eyes are trying to look there, but the display is right here. And that's what actually causes nausea and eye fatigue. It's coupled with, I would say that the latency or the refresh rate. So it has to be above 90 frames per second. Resolution isn't as important actually on that aspect.
Frame rate, yeah.
But it's always about frame rate. And we haven't been able to figure, because a normal human, when you're young, when you're a child, you can depict thousands of depth cues, these focal depths all the way out. Now, as you get older, obviously, we all know this, as your lens convex, so you have to wear lenses, right? So a human at maybe 35, 40 years old, and men and women are a little bit different here. Genetic history plays a part, but you can only maybe assume 16 different depths as you get over, and then over 50, 65 or 4.
Wow.
But this is really important. And Magic Leap attempted, I know where I'm going back to MR just real quick, but I think that MR and VR are going to merge eventually. You'll have a device that does both.
Yeah.
But Magic Leap tried to tackle this issue by doing multifocal depth planes. So they did this by using 6 different waveguides. They're stacked on top of each other. So you have 3 waveguides for each focal length, red, green, and blue. And the original HoloLens just has one, a central focal depth. They have 3 waveguides. So they just doubled that. And as your eye saccades, as it moves around, that focal shifting will kind of blend out as you're looking. But for me, 2 is not enough. Again, as I said, if you're over 60 years old, you probably still have at least 5 lengths that you can see out. And it's really hard on your eyes.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
So the virtual reality foveated rendering and eye tracking, if they can get that to a point where it's 99%, that's going to alleviate a lot of problems, but we still have VAC. We still have vergence accommodation that we have to tackle. And I believe a different technology is going to fix that. It's not going to be, a big OLED liquid crystalline silicon LCD screen in front of your face.
But that aside, the combination of foveated rendering and eye tracking is going to reduce the requirement of processing power to be able to deliver high quality video. That's what I think I'm hearing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
instead of using a really high powerful GPU, you could use your phone.
You can use your mobile. So that gets us to the Qualcomm chipset, right? And so I refer to the Qualcomm, the 835, 845, 855 Snapdragons, which are I think the three that are in the world right now. 835 is most of what we're seeing in the all-in-one headsets, which is the Focus and the Oculus Go and which one is that? Is that the Focus?
This is the Lenovo Mirage. I got
Lenovo Mirage, yeah. Yep. And
they're all 835. Even the Quest, Oculus Quest, it's the same.
Yep, 835, and then the next group that's going to come out is the 845, but they've already announced the reference design for the 55, and then we have 5G, and so I want to talk about like the convergence of all of this stuff, because what I see is that the combination of eye tracking, foveated rendering, higher capability mobile chips. Almost feels like it's like do you need 5G? Because let's talk about 5G. So the promise, and I'll pull it all together at the end, hopefully. So the promise of 5G that I've heard, and I've seen like what Alvin did at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, where they were streaming video on 5G to the mobile headsets, is like sub 1 millisecond latency, right? And gigabit speed. So you could literally theoretically stream photorealistic quality video to a headset with no real GPU processing in the headset. Is that right? Is that what the promise is?
Yeah, that's what they're aiming for. I mean, right now, most of the latency that we see on various technologies, let's say there's 4G LTEs, 70 to 80 milliseconds, with the millimeter wave 5GE rollout, and also we call it the small cell deployments, which is bringing because 5G itself, a millimeter wave can't go through walls very well.
Right.
There's a big issue. So they have to bring a lot of that infrastructure close to you. We call it the cloud or the edge computing. They got to bring all that 5G infrastructure very, very close to you to bring the latency down to, less than 5 milliseconds. But absolutely, what we want to do is take the computation out of the headset as much as we can, because if we can do that, then the battery life is inconsequential. I mean, we always focus on, and I always say this about Elon Musk. Most people don't realize it. Elon may dream about going to Mars and having all these electric vehicles all over the world, but he's really, really focused on energy density, right? Increasing the amount of energy in that smaller footprint. And that's very important in these headsets too, because right now we have to keep increasing the headset or the electrochemical generating power as the processors get more powerful. Yeah. Sometimes they become more efficient, but they still start to draw more power because, like the Magic Leap or some of these headsets can do 400,000 polygons. You can really push the GPU, but you're going to have to be connected to a battery the whole time on the wall, right? So I think that 5G is going to allow so many different use cases and proof of concepts and many different applications and sectors that we haven't even thought of.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to change. It's going to change the way that we interact with each other and change the way that we see the world.
And so I totally agree with that. And so, but just from a time horizon, lots of talk, lots of hype. I love AT&T's campaign. Slap 5G on a Samsung phone and call it like it's, absurd. But when is it really going to happen? Is it 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? When do you see this hitting the mainstream and being really functional?
I see 2022.
Okay.
That you'll probably see. For me, I try to measure things in millions of units, not thousands. So
yeah,
I would say by 2022, 2023, we'll have at least 8 to 10 different manufacturers of near eye displays, smart glasses, and virtual reality, mixed reality products that are have integrated 5G radios. And some people are still very wary about putting a 5G millimeter wave radio real close to your face. So I think that's maybe that. I think as consumers, we've just put technology in our pocket. We don't really care, right? But that is something to think about. There isn't a lot of study. I've been around RF for a long time, and 5G is between 30 gigs and 300 gigahertz. So it's much higher frequencies, and the long-term health effects haven't been studied or substantiated really. But I guess people would just put it on your face if it makes their life
absolutely
easier.
Whatever.
If I can become more productive and I start making 30% more per year because I have a pair of glasses that helps me retain information, learn more quickly, people are going to use it overnight.
So is there an opportunity between now and 2022? I know some people are actually experimenting now with 5G in location-based VR, where I think that's what HTC was showing at MWC was this, use case or proof of concept that you can use 5G to stream locally. So there's a thing. There's a thing called VAai gig, right? Which is the
VAai gig, 60 gigahertz,
which is 60 gigahertz, which kind of in a local area network should provide the same benefits. What's the challenge of VAai gig, and why aren't more people using it for free roam, streaming video to the headset versus waiting for 5G?
Well, again, I think it's some of it's cost. I mean, you'd have to. I always ask myself why hasn't the manufacturers integrated, wireless into the headset?
Yeah.
Why do you got to buy, just like with your phone? Why do you got to buy a glass protector for your phone? It's insane. So now with your virtual reality headset, you're going to have to buy eye tracking, a wireless adapter. I mean, at the end of the day, you got a spacesuit on. You got something that looks like from the movie Dune. I'm like, Father,
as long as we're not drinking our own urine, I'm okay with that, though. So
I think it's going to happen, but a lot of it has to come down to form factor and safety. Just the amount of simultaneous and concurrent users on the same network, bandwidth limitations. There's a company called Moses that does some tracking. They're awesome. Their CEO is amazing. He's a very brilliant guy. I call him one of the true inventors out in the world. He's really great. I met him over at Microsoft, and we did some green screen stuff at their big production studio. I think that stuff's going to happen as they shrink the form factor down, and maybe even, oh my God, actually design it into the headset.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you hit on battery life, because that was the thing I wasn't actually thinking about, because the original question was, if we get to, with foveated rendering and eye tracking, we get to the point where the GPUs aren't being taxed as much, that's going to extend battery life as well, right? Theoretically. So do we really need to move all of because I see those things converging, the reduction of GPU requirement on the headset converging with 5G and streaming video on the headset. How do you see those two things? Because, they almost cancel each other out from a solution provider standpoint. Do you have an idea of how that's going to, I know this is kind of a total geek fest from my perspective, but how does that play out? Or do you just have two competing solutions then, where you've got like low end headsets that can do really high quality video and you have 5G streaming, or is 5G just going to make everything else obsolete because it's just going to be so easy?
Yeah, I think that there's a combination factor here of 5G with camera positioning systems. So it's very important to understand right now, GPS positional systems consume a lot of power. And there's a company called Phantasmo that has devised a new way to just use your phone to position yourself in the world. And it's like, if you look at the resolution, and I think GPS is at 30 meters, and the CPS, or camera positioning systems, down to 0.5.
Yeah.
So that takes even more, because that, again, everything is computation to me. Everything is consuming some kind of vibration or energy in the world. And we want to eliminate that, simplify the optics, simplify the design, the mechanical system, go from passive cooling to active, whatever you need to do, get all these things very, very simple. So Yeah, I think for a period of time, we're probably going to have some competing technologies, maybe some low-end headsets that don't have, the capabilities of a professional grade headset. And I believe what you'll see is many of these manufacturers will come out with a tiered based solution. So they'll have a headset with 3 different iterations. One, that's between $300 and $500. One's between 500 and 1,000, and one's that's like 5,000. That's like the creme de la creme, and the people that want to pay for the best optics, the best battery life, and has a wireless adapter, et cetera.
And right now we're seeing that just across multiple manufacturers, right? Where Oculus is clearly, their market research has clearly said $400 is the price point, right? And they're ripping shit out of different models to keep under that $400 price point. So
yes, they are.
Yeah. And so what I think this means to my audience, which if you're either looking at buying a VR solution for location-based VR or you're building one, is right now 5G. It's in the future, and you don't have to worry about it. And what I think we're seeing, what I've told people, and I want your opinion on this, and call bullshit if I'm wrong, is that inside, the landscape for tracking is basically Inside Out and Lighthouse 2.0. Like those are the 2 things that are going to be around for the next couple of years. And then from a headset standpoint, you're either mobile or backpack, and those are your 2 options, and figure out what your diagram, your four square looks like. And maybe I'll work on that today and post that to the group. What am I missing in that? I do tend to oversimplify things on purpose. What am I missing from that? Or if you're trying to evaluate your $100,000 or $200,000 investment in a LBVR solution, like what else should you be thinking about?
Well, I mean, if you look at this technology here, all the new headsets are all going to have this inside-out tracking here via these stereo cameras.
Yep.
The interesting part about this also will enable stereo pass-through mixed reality.
Yeah, so let's talk about that.
That is not susceptible to, as you can see it, direct sunlight, where diffractive waveguides, because they allow external lighting inside, and it has to blend in with the combiner, and it has to collimate at 45 degrees TIR at 45 degrees to come into your eye. It's very sensitive to external lighting. So that's why I say that I believe that Apple is going to release a product that directly competes with Oculus Quest, because the Oculus Quest is going to be the first headset to sell in this space outside of the PlayStation VR. I believe Oculus Quest is going to sell 8 to 10 million units.
Wow.
I do.
Good call.
I really
hope
do.
You're right. I kind of hope you're right.
What do I? I mean,
because it'll breathe life into the ecosystem, right? Which it really needs some air right now. It's starved.
Well, the reason that a lot of the air has been taken out is because many of these so-called industry leaders have been, kind of saying a lot of bullshit. If I can be honest with you, they've been.
This is a no bullshit zone, man.
Yeah, they've been telling people that the world is here now and our product is the best and you should get it because of X. But they don't tell everybody that it's actually not that much different than last year's model. It has all of these limitations. And they're not honest. And I think that's one of the main reasons why I continue to put stuff on LinkedIn is to kind of pull that veil up and bring some transparency back to the market, because I believe that's the only way to move it forward is to be honest, to have a high level of integrity. And that's how you develop trust with your consumers. Because right now, a lot of them are like, what? I'm not even going to buy that because last time they said it was going to do this and it didn't do it. And, and I think the second thing is safety. So in virtual reality right now, it's very unsafe. I mean, Robert Scoble and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, that him and his son were playing a game and his son almost hit his friend like right in the face. There's absolutely no safety systems inside of these, these platforms. And I think that's very dangerous. And I think that's another thing that's holding back location-based virtual reality is the assure, that basically from, the manufacturer standpoint or the business owner, that when you come inside, we're going to prevent you from getting hurt somehow.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely an attendant required in many of these systems, which drives the labor rates up. I mean, location-based VR, this trampoline parks, dude, you want to talk about dangerous, right? I mean, these guys live in the danger zone, laser tag, 30 kids running around with computers in the dark, in fog, right? I mean, so I think that from a location-based standpoint, they're okay with the risk. It's really the labor associated with it that it has been slowing down the adoption of it. But in the consumer market, I totally agree with you. We were just at Servios recently doing a couple of demos of some new stuff that they did, and they're using the Quest, and you can draw your own ring around it so you can see the limits. But when you're fully immersed, you're not looking at that, and you miss it. And next thing you know, do you remember when the Wii first came out and people were playing tennis and they were breaking their television sets with the remote, and it was all over? Did that happen to you?
Yeah.
And so they had to
not the first time, but
upgrade the app and stuff like that. And so the first 5 or 6 people that break, fall in and trip over the cat and hit their head and die of, or get concussed or whatever, which is going to happen if this stuff gets into the mainstream. We've all seen the videos already of people crashing into bookcases doing VR. And so I agree with you. I really think there's massive friction in the consumer market for VR for gaming. And I don't know, and maybe pass-through is part of that, but I don't know how pass-through solves that problem, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, I don't think it solves it for VR, but I think it adds an element of, I'd say from a user's perspective, that they can actually see the world and interact and see their hands, maybe see digital elements.
And you can pause and like take a sip of your beer or your Slurpee or whatever, right? But actually, maybe one of the things they could do is, like, once you approach that zone, if it just goes transparent and you can actually see that you're about to crash into the television. I don't know that happens gradually enough in the experience, but anyway, I think it's a massive challenge. So Joe Pulte's asking a question about, and I want to get to this because I think it's really important. How many companies are out there working on a Quest-based multiplayer free roam game for FECs? Now, Oculus showed this Dead and Buried demo, which was a highly staged demo with, that was, very carefully curated, and everybody bought it, and everybody was like, whoa, that's amazing. And I'm like, don't forget the whale jumping out of the gymnasium in the Magic League.
Oh, God.
Like, don't fucking forget that people.
No one's wearing a headset. Oh my God. How the hell did they see a whale?
And so people do this shit all the time. And even when HoloLens 2 came out, and I posted on LinkedIn, I said, look, I reposted the HoloLens 1 demo when they were launched. And I was like, don't forget that this was all bullshit then too, right? And so
3.5 years ago, right?
Yeah. Right. And so
a long time ago.
Buy this stuff. And so I know, so one of my clients, Holodeck VR in Germany, has been doing a lot of testing around these inside out headsets, and they have a hybrid tracking system, and some of it's a little self-serving, obviously, because if free roam VR with inside out tracking has drift problems, then their technology is a solution for that. And so, just take that with a grain of salt. But I've seen the data, and I know that at least so far, there's been massive drift issues, and Microsoft had massive drift issues with their first version of Windows Mixed Reality, and now they've solved that by being able to save the point cloud, but it's a PC-based system. I think in a mobile-based system, that's got to be a bigger challenge. Like, how do you save a point cloud with mobile headsets, with 20 or 30 headsets in one location? Like, I don't know how you do that.
Well, you share the mesh. I mean, that's what 6D AI is using just with your camera. But if any of the headset manufacturers decided to use a technology like vertical cavity surface emitting lasers, like a depth infrared flood emitter, that would give them a little bit more real-time information of what's in front of the user 5, 6, 7 meters out.
And what do you know about the new Sony one? So I read some stuff about the new Sony light laser emitter that they're rumoring is going to be built into the new iPhones, which means the price of those modules is going to come down. What do you What do you know about that, and how does it work, and what does it do for us?
Yeah, it's essentially the same thing. I mean, it's doubling. So the iPhone X Max, I got that here, is using an infrared flood emitter on the front with 30,000 points to flood the scene. It's a little bit different than a time of flight sensor, right? Which has higher pixel accuracy. But the new laser system is doubling those dots. So it's putting out around 60,000 points out to 6 to 8 meters. And they're going to put that on meters out. So you're going to be able to have an experience here where you just put your hand out and you can touch buttons, right? You'll be able to have full hand tracking, but actually reach out and grab a ball and move it around. So that it's going to change quite a few things in the technology itself. I mean, that the hybrid connections between your phone and new VR, MR, AR is really going to be an exciting time and within the ecosystem, because it's kind of joined together these technologies, and it's going to be interesting to see how they piece together, these different parts of the technology.
And maintain the $400 price point.
I didn't say that.
I know. and look for LBVR, I think there's room for more expensive equipment. Like it's not unreasonable to have $1,000 headset if you have a good business model around it. And so I think, hopefully VAai or somebody, maybe Valve, I don't know, we'll see, my guess is Valve is more focused on consumer. I want to talk about that too. So
they have a headset too coming out, yeah.
So they have a new headset coming out. What do you know about it? Have you been able to discern anything? Like, those guys are super secretive and
they've been really tight-lipped. I saw the field of view is a little bit increased, about 120 degrees. Again, this is kind of all hearsay. They do have stereo pass-through cameras. I mean, it's interesting to see them come out and support their own ecosystem, instead of having all these other competitors designing headsets to come into their gaming system. Now they can just design their own, and I think that's a good play for them. But again, I don't know a lot about the specifics. I always like to get my hands on the equipment before I can kind of, give opinions and narrate out.
Yeah, I just make up opinions just out of thin air. So that's where you and I differ. That's why I love your shit.
Well, I mean, I sometimes I'll do that. I haven't seen the HoloLens 2. They won't even let me try it. Not yet, at least I've kind of been on the blackball list, mainly just because they don't want somebody out there before it's released, kind of giving a firsthand view of because again, I'm one of those people that will critically evaluate the engineering analysis, the mechanical, electrical, ergonomics, all those kinds of things, but also look at the negative aspects and be very honest with the community. So they have not answered any of my messages about trying to test that out.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, I want to address Joe's thing, and just to close the loop on the inside out tracking multiplayer free roam thing and saving the point cloud. I think the reason that it works within Windows and what Zero Latency did and Samosity and some other companies in solving that was it's PC based, and you can there's tools that you can get in and use it. And they worked with Microsoft. Microsoft was interested in solving the problem. And so they worked with the solution providers to come up with a solution to save the point cloud and make it work. My concern with Oculus is it's a closed system. They haven't shown any interest in working with the location-based VR community. They have one guy whose title is LBVR, and frankly, like, he doesn't seem, and I hope he's watching. He doesn't seem like he's really fully engaged in the industry. And so I don't know that when I say not how do you do it, I don't mean from a technical standpoint. I mean from a practical standpoint, how do you do it? And so, so anyway, that's kind of my thinking about the Oculus. I know technically it's possible, but I don't know if it's practically possible to build a solution where you save the point cloud unless they enable those tools. And in order to enable those tools, they have to see location-based VR as a real market. And I just don't think they see it as a market. I think they're super.
You're right. They don't see it as a market, and frankly, they don't care. They know that they're going to sell at least 5 million units on this Oculus Quest with the upgrades and the marketing and their reach, which is primarily, I think, why the other co-founder of Oculus left, because he wanted to move forward on releasing a new Oculus Rift update instead of this ridiculous headset that doesn't even have an IPD adjustment. And the refresh rate went from 90 hertz to 80. I mean, when have you heard an update on a product 3-4 years later where they reduced technical requirements? I mean, the only thing they increased or I guess enhanced on it was getting rid of the external tracking towers, just have inside out tracking. Yeah. That's not.
Well, look, that is from a consumer setup standpoint, it's a big deal.
That's true.
It's a big deal. And what they're trying to do is remove the friction from people using it, right? Because it's a high friction technology, it's a high friction solution, and people don't like friction. And so the more they can remove shit to make it easier to use, even if the experience. Look, they released. I'm not a big Oculus Go fan, but they released Oculus Go, which I thought was a crap product, and they sold 1 million units or whatever, and they didn't seem to care about the experience very much, right? So I think they're more concerned about removing friction from the experience and the quality of the experience, and then over time, all of that should get better. So I see their strategy; it's crystal clear to me, and we'll see whether or not they can pull it off.
They have a timeline of where they want to get to, and they don't care what, any critics out here or people in the industry, what they say should or should not be here. I'm one of those people that believe that the manufacturer should empower users by allowing them to upgrade their own equipment. And that's something I'm working on as a private project for me, is developing a headset that anybody can upgrade whenever you want.
Hey, that was the theory behind the OSVR, right? Which was Sensix and Razer. They created this OSVR thing, which was supposed to be like almost a headset kit, but hardware is expensive, and doing low volume custom hardware, it's really hard to be in business. Hardware is hard, so unfortunately it didn't pan out. Yeah, but there's room. I think there's room, and they were really early. There were 5 customers for that product at the time. I think now, with a viable ecosystem of people building VR solutions, especially for out of home, somebody going into that market today might have a better run at it. So what do you think, Valve? So Valve. So they've created a lighthouse tracking system. HTC now is showing inside out tracking in their next headsets. When I read the tea leaves, I presume that Valve is gonna rip out or break away from HTC. It was always a fractious relationship. Some people have suggested that the new Valve headset is going to be inside out, though. What do you discern from the pictures and the stuff that's out there? What do you see?
Yeah, absolutely, it's going to be inside out tracking. I think everybody's taking advantage of the advancements over the last few years by various companies around the world. And if you're not using inside out tracking, you're going to be left behind right now. Right. So they're definitely going to integrate it into their headset. Nobody wants to set up external sensors anymore. I mean, it's so cumbersome. If you just give somebody a headset and go, hey, here you go, dude, put it on, power it on, and the application's ready to go anywhere you are, that's a pretty amazing accomplishment.
So for location-based, so let's get into hand tracking, because that was the other thing that I have on here, right? And so for location-based, you need to be able to track other stuff besides the body, right, the head. And so that's where external cameras come in, unless we start seeing headsets that have cameras positioned everywhere that can do a better job of tracking. So one of the limitations of the inside-out cameras is you got field of view issues to track a gun or your hands, right? So all of a sudden you need to reach back and grab an arrow from your quiver to put it on here, and it loses your hand, and then it comes back and your hand's not there, and then it appears, and it's a shitty experience. So what do you see happening there? Is that where Lighthouse is going to maintain its domain, or do you think they're going to place cameras in more places around a headset to solve that? What do you think?
Absolutely. I kind of made a few predictions on. I thought the HoloLens 2 was going to have an Azure V3 on the back as well. Exceptionally to create a 360-degree point cloud. That's a missed opportunity for me. I'm sure they're going to integrate it. They have some other special designs. They're only supplying to the Army that have radiometric thermal imaging and some other sensor systems. But I think any company that wants to provide a complete 360 immersive experience should be thinking about placing either 4 different cameras, and this is where the Qualcomm 855 comes in. It supports that. The 35 only does 2 16 megapixel cameras, which is why you see just 2 cameras on systems. That's the only thing.
What about the 45? What about the 45? Do you know what it supports?
The Fort's still 2, but I believe the 855 is 4.
Yeah.
With a couple of expansion slots. So
well,
I could be wrong.
We're still at least 2 years away from seeing an 855 in a product, don't you think?
Yeah, and by the time we get there, they'll have the 875 or the XR3. It's really, even for me, I'm in this 365 days, like 24/7, and I can barely keep up.
Yeah.
So it's actually fascinating to see how quickly this Moore's law does not apply anymore. I love everybody. It's like, oh, Moore's law,
Yeah. Yeah. Just shrink it down to months instead of years. We've seen, I think, who's announced hand tracking in their inside out headsets so far? I've tried to get HP to cop to it. They haven't said anything. Because the capability is there. I know HTC has shown it. You've demoed it. What else is there? What headsets have announced inside hand tracking in the headset?
So we'll just strictly stick on VR, right? Virtual reality.
VR. Yeah.
Well, any of the HMDs now that are being released with dual stereo front-facing cameras should be able to track at least 21-point skeletal hand tracking. HTC Vive Pro just
Yep.
released that capability. I created a video for it a
Yep.
couple weeks ago. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, before, if you look at, just the Leap Motion, that's, 25-point hand tracking. That's with an infrared flood emitter. This is just using camera and some algorithms to track your hand and the points via, segmentation. So I think machine learning is going to play a bigger part here than people realize.
In your experience in the hand tracking, was it as good from a fidelity standpoint as Leap Motion?
No.
Okay.
No, very, very jittery again, because it just came out, but I've been actually testing that same capability for the last 6 months. I did it for a client. They asked me they didn't want to put depth sensors on a piece of technology. So I did the same thing 6 months ago.
Yeah.
With just 2 cameras.
So is Leap Motion going to make it? Like, because this is a really practical question, because I know solution providers that are using Leap Motion in their tech stack for the consumer experience. And I've told them, I said, look, that could be a supply chain risk, because I don't know, like, if this shit's all going to get built into the headsets, like what do you need it? Or maybe for the 360 degree, maybe that's the angle for them or something. But how do they survive?
I mean, they're going to have to pivot, because they lost a huge opportunity. Apple had looked at acquiring them after they did a Cooney holographics and Mateo for the facial tracking recognition.
Yeah.
They were going to get Leap Motion. I mean, and the leadership, executive leadership at Leap Motion balked, multiple times, and they kind of sullied the waters a bit or muddied the waters, and they walked away from it. But that was a huge opportunity for them to get their designs integrated into the next gen Apple products of the next generation, the transformational paradigm technology that's coming. I think they really missed a big opportunity, and I'm not sure, even with their advanced integrator, they have another Leap Motion embeddable product that's higher resolution. It's a little bit smaller that you can embed in, like you're saying.
Yeah.
But if you don't need that product, and you can just do it with the camera, you've already saved computation and battery power. I mean, that decision's easy. You're not going to put the motion in if you can do the same thing with the camera. Even if the resolution's less than, let's say you get a 20% reduction in the hand tracking versus the Leap Motion. Most consumers just want to be able to. Most people don't want to
do that. They just want to see their hands. Like, whoa, that's really cool.
You're just going to reach out and do this. I mean, in the future, everything's going to be voice recognition with bone conduction and stuff. EEG. These are just stopgaps, until we get to that point.
Yeah, but they've been saying that since 1980 something, when I was a stockbroker. I was a penny stockbroker, and Steve Wozniak was one of the co-founders of Apple, was on the board of directors of a company called Microphonics, and it was a penny stock. This is like in 1986 or something, 1984, and it was a penny stock, and they were promising voice-activated computer controls in the 80s, and I still can't get fucking Siri to do anything but give me the weather, right? And so. So I'm still. I know some of them are getting better, but I think we're a ways off for voice control. I'm a skeptic, based on my personal experience.
We have a long way to go, man. I always tell people that when they ask me about AI now, people go, "Oh, artificial general intelligence is right around the corner." I'm like, "We're not even artificial narrow intelligence right now."
Yeah.
I said it takes a year for them to associate a pixel class and instantiate that and basically do semantic segmentation. That's not AI. Using these perceptrons is not AI, as it were, because it's not aware of itself. It's not cognitive.
What about the Dota thing? What about AI playing the best Dota team in the world and actually fucking beating them? Like, what's up with that? Have you followed that at all?
Yeah, of course. I think we referenced this in a conversation I was having on Twitter, is that the AI that they're talking about doesn't even know it's playing a game, right? All it is reinforcement learning. So it knows that if it makes that decision, it gets penalized. If it makes this decision, it doesn't. So that's not AI to me, right? That's a very closed loop system, but it's accomplished some really incredible things. If you look at Go and the chess champions and all those things, as the 80s and 90s, the AI went up and then came back down, and now we're on the inflection curve back up for AI.
When it realizes it's playing a game, though, isn't that like the dawn of the singularity? And isn't that when we're all fucked?
Yeah, I mean, that's why you hear people like Elon Musk going, we need to be very careful on what kind of connectivity the systems we're building in, these huge, because I've been a part of 700 data center construction projects all around the world. I've been to Dublin 55 times. I've been to every Intel and Microsoft data center in the world. I've seen all this infrastructure that they're building. I mean, miles and miles of buildings. You can't even imagine. Millions of batteries. That's why they contract me. But it's just incredible to see the scale and scope of that most people don't see.
Yeah.
These places are guarded more than a nuclear silo. So it's pretty incredible. But once we get to that point, they're going to have to be very careful about what that AI has access to in the closed ecosystem. Is it only designed for one specific thing? It needs to stay within that realm. So
yeah, the problem with that is we can't even keep fucking Russian hackers out of our credit card records. So the odds of us being successful in that is a fucking big zero, man.
Well, exactly. You know who taught all the Russians and Chinese and North Koreans? We did.
Yeah.
For the last 40 years. So I don't even talk about that shit with people because it's just a moot point. I'm like, listen, we're purveyors of that stuff more than anybody.
Yeah. When the next alien civilization writes our history record, I'm sure that'll be an interesting read. So, So Tony, dude, I can't thank you enough for coming on and for everything that you've done, for the country, for mankind, for your fellow servicemen, and everything you're doing now for the industry and keeping it real, man. That's I think why my peeps are going to love you, is because the whole honesty and integrity and holding people accountable for what they say and calling bullshit on it. I think we need more of that.
I think it's vitally important. I mean, obviously, firstly, I just want to say thank you very much for having me here today. Thank you for saying about the service. Us service members really appreciate that. I don't think military veterans get the respect they deserve around the country. But also just, within this ecosystem, I would like to tell everybody out there is that, don't get hung up on failures. I released one of my kind of thought-provoking messages a couple of days ago is that, I failed college 3 times. I had a 2.1 GPA in high school. I was not some outlier of some brilliant kid. They thought I had a learning disability and stuff, but it's just hard work, perseverance, and really respecting people and checking your ego at the door, maintaining a humble mindset, and trying to learn from every person that you meet, because no matter what, every person you meet has a unique perspective on life. And they probably have something that they can teach you that could potentially change your entire life. So it's just, and that's what I try to do on LinkedIn is sharing my message, sharing my stories, but also sharing my journey and adventure in spatial computing, which is only 3 years old, of trying to empower millions of people around the world without asking for anything in return and doing it for free. And that's really important. I think the world would be a better place if we had more people doing that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, my theory, I'm in this thing called Thought Leaders Business School, and what they tell you is information is free. Put it out there. People want experiences. And so like just put your knowledge out there to help people learn, and then make your money by providing a really good experience for people that want to go deeper. And so that's what this whole webinar series is about. And I know that's what you're about. That's what I'm trying to be about. I'm not quite, I don't know that I'm quite as eloquent as you are. And I certainly don't understand the tech as well. And the fact that you've done that, you've built that knowledge base, obviously on a career-long foundation of technology understanding. But the fact that you've gotten to this level in 3 years is remarkable. And so it gives me hope that there's still a chance, even after 30 years, that I can figure this shit out.
I tell everybody that. I'm like, some people call me an expert, or I was like, I don't even use that word for a reason. And mainly it's because it takes a lifetime to achieve mastery. So for me, when somebody says that you're an expert, I say, listen, I'm an enthusiast. I'm an interested party. I'm somebody who's dedicating his life in the pursuit of knowledge within this sphere of spatial computing and beyond. But I am not an expert. I'll be the first person to tell you that I do not know everything, and I want to learn from you. So it's important.
So everybody, thank you for joining. Thank you, Tony, for taking some time and go enjoy the freaking beautiful sunshine up there while it's there. Next week, Tommy Goodkin, who's the head of content for VR World in New York City, is going to be joining us. VR World is one of the largest VR arcades in the world. Certainly, I think the largest in the US. It's a pure VR arcade, and they're doing some amazing things. They've learned some really good lessons over the last 18 months. So really looking forward to getting some insight from him and what's working and what isn't working. And follow Tony. I'll be following you. I'll see you on LinkedIn, my friend. And let's get together and grab a beer at some point. I'd love to get to know you a little bit better.
Me too. Absolutely, man. Thank you so much, man. I'm a huge fan of you as well. And thank you to everybody out there who tunes in on LinkedIn and beyond. You guys give me so much inspiration and positive feedback and confidence. It means the world to me. So thank you guys all very much.
Awesome. Thank you, my friend. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Take care.
See you guys. Bye-bye.